I direct that Count 1, conspiracy to commit bribery, shall remain on file and shall not proceed absent the express authorisation of the Court of Appeal or of this Court. I set the Proceeds of Crime Act timetable as agreed between the parties, and I impose the statutory surcharge. Nathan Gill, you were elected to the European Parliament to represent Wales, serving from the 1st of July 2014 until the United Kingdom's withdrawal from the European Union on the 31st of January 2020. Initially affiliated with the UK Independence Party, which you led in Wales from December 2014 to 2016, you subsequently joined the Brexit Party and later assumed leadership of the Reform UK Party in Wales for a brief period commencing in March 2021. The pertinent Code for Conduct for members of the European Parliament emphasises that they must be guided by principles of disinterest, integrity, transparency, diligence, honesty, accountability, and respect for parliamentary dignity and reputation. Members are to act solely in the public interest, abstaining from the pursuit or acceptance of direct or indirect benefits or rewards. On the 26th of September 2025, you entered guilty pleas to 8 counts of bribery, contrary to Section 2 of the Bribery Act. Mr. Hayward, King's Counsel, has set out the uncontested facts. Each count encapsulates specific incidents or periods between December 2018 and July 2019, during which, as an MEP, you agreed to accept monetary reward in exchange for the improper execution of your public duties. The architect of these bribes was Oleg Voloshin, a former pro-Russian Ukrainian MP and journalist. During your interactions, he and his wife were connected with the private Ukrainian television channel 112 Ukraine, owned by an associate of Viktor Medvedchuk. It appears that in due course you joined the editorial board of that organisation. Medvedchuk, chairman of the opposition Platform for Life pro-Russian Ukrainian political party in 2018, and subsequently an MP, has since faced criminal allegations, including of treason and the looting of national resources in Crimea. He is a close friend of Vladimir Putin, Russia's president since 2012. Medvedchuk was the ultimate source of the requests and the money you received. You were apprehended at Manchester Airport on the 13th of September 2021. Your mobile device was confiscated and you cooperated by providing its PIN, stating your journey to Russia was at the behest of a scientific conference in Moscow. Forensic analysis of your phone revealed extensive correspondence with Voloshin from September 2018 to December 2020. The genesis of your relationship culminated in a visit to Kyiv in November 2018 when you toured 112 Ukraine's studios. Subsequently, Voloshin solicited your participation in making statements within the European Parliament and to media outlets for which you received payment. The statements advanced narratives advantageous to Russian interests concerning Ukraine. This was a period of considerable turmoil in Ukraine and a prelude to the full-scale Russian invasion in February 2022. Count 2. On the 12th of December 2018, you delivered a parliamentary speech criticising Ukraine's purported undemocratic practices and suppression of press freedom. Ironically, your speech was meticulously scripted by Voloshin, and you were remunerated for its verbatim delivery. You shared a video of the speech with Voloshin, who praised your oratory. You replied, V should be pleased with this 3 times what he thought, alluding to Viktor Medvedchuk. Count 3. On the 5th of February 2019, you gave an interview to 112 Ukraine voicing concern over Medvedchuk's high treason allegation, as per Voloshin's directive, and using a list of talking points you requested from him. This was for a certain reward. You referenced a German MEP as a potential participant in the broadcast, noting he would not require rewarding. Voloshin, after consulting V, encouraged you to arrange the involvement of 3 MEPs, promising and later confirming a monetary reward of €5,000. The interview, solely featuring you, aired under the headline, MEPs Condemn Criminal Case Against Viktor Medvedchuk. Count 4. On the 6th and 7th of February, you enlisted the MEPs for South West England, North West England and North East England, as well as the German MEP, to give interviews to 112 Ukraine at Voloshin's request, adopting and in line with a script he sent you. I must make it clear that the case has not been presented on the basis that any of those individuals knew how you were acting, namely that you'd been promised altogether 5K for it. Voloshin described your work as outstanding. Count 5. On the 14th of March 2019, following Voloshin's proposition of a reward, you participated in a parliamentary debate concerning Kazakhstan. The underlying intent was to comment upon the Ukrainian election campaign. Employing Voloshin's script, you claimed to have reliable reports of human rights watchdogs being concerned about growing challenges to democracy, and you alleged governmental pressure on media, notably 112 Ukraine. Medvedchuk praised your brilliant speech, and Voloshin indicated a budget was available for you, contingent upon the number of friendly MEPs you could muster for further supportive commentary, with the promise of at least 5K for your efforts. The subject matter was to be stability of gas transit through Ukraine, with praise for Medvedchuk and the Russian Prime Minister, Dmitry Medvedev, and Voloshin supplied details of what was to be said. Count 6. On the 25th of March, commentary from a French MEP was disseminated, followed by 4 others, 3 of them British, on the 27th of March. All followed the lines that Voloshin had fed you. Again, there's no evidence that these participants, the MEPs for East Midlands, South West England, and one who'd already contributed, were aware of your pecuniary motivation. On the 3rd of April, you received €5,000 and $2,000 from Voloshin. He told you Medvedchuk was boasting to his friends about the friendly words you had arranged for the MEPs to say. Count 7. On the 24th of May, Voloshin offered €2,000 for a television interview criticising the recently elected President Zelensky of Ukraine, questioning his commitment to pursuing a peace agenda with Russia, and by contrast, lauding Viktor Medvedchuk's initiatives to find a compromise. You complied, and your interview was broadcast, with Medvedchuk describing your contribution as brilliant and devastating for traditional establishment victory. Your enthusiastic reply was, "Thank you both. We have our work cut out." Count 8. In late May and June, Voloshin solicited your assistance in hosting Viktor Medvedchuk at the European Parliament for the presentation of his Donbass peace plan ahead of parliamentary elections in Ukraine in July. You agreed to be rewarded for inviting fellow Brexit Party members. The Donbass is an industrial heartland, rich in natural resources, and Ukraine had declared it occupied by Russia in 2018. Voloshin refused $1,000 he owed you, and to having secured €4,000 he was bringing for you. Count 9. Between the 12th and 18th of July, you agreed in exchange for compensation to facilitate positive commentary from MEPs regarding the pro-Russian channel News One and its joint event with a Russian broadcaster. After 112 Ukraine's premises were damaged by a grenade launcher, you were instructed to submit a written question for the Vice President of the European Commission and High Representative for Foreign Affairs, commending an urgent investigation of a terrorist attack on the TV station. You acquiesced, submitting the question on the 17th of July, which was published on the Parliament's website. Your subsequent communications with Voloshin included requests for talking points and arrangements for new MEPs to make statements. Voloshin acknowledged owing you for these endeavours. Your collaboration persisted after the UK's departure from the EU, with evidence indicating you received €5,000 in Kyiv in December 2020, the maximum cash allowable for cross-border transport. Voloshin was intercepted by the FBI in Washington in July 2021 and sanctioned by the United States in January 2022. He was indicted for treason in Ukraine in February 2023. Viktor Medvedchuk was placed under house arrest in 2021. Eventually, he was sent to Russia in September 2022 as part of a prisoner exchange. You attended a police interview on the 3rd of March 2022, responding no comment to all queries concerning the contents of your phone. Charged by postal requisition on the 30th of January 2025, you appeared before the court on the 24th of February. At a preliminary hearing on the 14th of March, you indicated not guilty pleas. You informed the prosecution of your intent to plead guilty to counts 2 to 9 shortly before entering those pleas on the 26th of September. The statutory maximum for a single offence under Section 2 of the Bribery Act 2010 is 10 years imprisonment. No pre-sentence report was deemed necessary. I apply the relevant guidelines for the offence, for guilty pleas and for totality. In evaluating your culpability, I must consider your role and the sophistication of your offending. You abused a position of significant authority and trust, with your crimes spanning 8 months, motivated by financial and political gain. The offending was sophisticated. You accepted payments from foreign nationals, made statements on important international matters at their behest, utilised scripted material presented as your own, and orchestrated the involvement of other MEPs. Your culpability is categorised as high, Category A. Mr. Wright, King's Counsel, contends that harm should be classified as Category 2, arguing that your actions had a significant but not serious impact on the European Parliament's proper functioning. The Crown asserts that Category 1 is applicable. I agree with the prosecution. The harm inflicted is indeed profound. Your conduct fundamentally compromised the integrity of a supranational legislative body, particularly in its dealings with Russia, a persistently hostile state, during a period of an association agreement between the EU and Ukraine reached in 2017. The revelation of your actions has a broad and deleterious effect on public confidence and trust in democratic institutions of importance to many dozens of millions of people. The aggregate financial gain, although difficult to quantify precisely due to the piecemeal and cash nature of payments, is substantial. The sentencing guidelines prescribe a starting point of 7 years custody with a range of 5 to 8 years for a single offence. Given the imperative to signal deterrence and the multitude of high culpability factors, the gravity of this case elevates it to the upper echelons of the normal range, even before considering 2 additional factors. Firstly, the offending was persistent rather than an isolated lapse of judgment. Secondly, the particularly egregious abuse of your position is exemplified in counts 4 and 6, where you enlisted other British MEPs without their knowledge of your financial motivation. Being careful to guard against double counting for any feature, nonetheless, these factors warrant a substantial upward adjustment, and justice necessitates consideration of consecutive terms amounting to a total of at least 16 years, exceeding the statutory maximum for a single offence before mitigation. There is scant personal mitigation. At 52 years of age, your previous unblemished character is of limited significance, as a clean record facilitates success and thus the opportunity to perpetrate such offences. In character references, you are described as a loving family man of deep faith who has demonstrated selflessness in public and private in the past. I have considered the impact of custodial punishment on your children. I must also reflect the mitigating effect of the passage of time since the offending and delays not attributable to your conduct. Weighing all the mitigation, I reduce the sentence by 2 years. Thus, the aggregate sentence prior to the mandatory reduction for your guilty pleas is 14 years. The law compels a reduction proportionate to the stage at which you indicated your intent to plead guilty, reflecting your acceptance of responsibility and sparing the court and the public the burden of a trial. You pleaded guilty at the plea and trial preparation hearing, having made no admissions in police interview and initially indicating not guilty pleas. As already observed, the evidence is derived almost exclusively from your own mobile device. The charges concern your agreement to accept money rather than the content of parliamentary and other utterances per se. After careful attention to the chronology, the Court of Appeal's guidance and the submissions, a 25% discount is appropriate. Upon reviewing the case holistically and applying the principle of totality to ensure the sentence is just and proportionate, no further reduction is warranted. Nathan Gill, please stand. When you were elected, you were entrusted to exercise independent judgment and uphold the highest standards of integrity, values of paramount importance. In seeking public office, one pledges to act in accordance with conscience and the public good. Parliamentarians wield significant influence over public and political discourse. It is incumbent upon them to speak with honesty and conviction, irrespective of whether their views are met with approval or dissent. When you say what someone has paid you to say, you are not speaking with sincerity. If it were your genuine opinion, you would not need to be paid for saying it. Whether or not you believed any of what you said at the behest of Voloshin and Medvedchuk, allowing money to corrupt your moral compass constitutes a grave betrayal of the trust vested in you by the electorate. Your misconduct has ramifications far beyond personal honour, which is now irretrievably damaged. It erodes public confidence in democracy. When politicians succumb to financial inducement, the public can no longer rely on the veracity of political debate, which may be tainted by disinformation. The enlisting of fellow representatives into this activity compounds the wrongdoing, undermining the mutual trust essential to the proper functioning of democratic institutions. The corrosive damage to public life caused by such actions is enduring. The Court regards bribery as a malignancy at the heart of public life, one that impoverishes the national interest. Those entrusted with public leadership are required to adhere to the highest standards of probity. The law will respond to such breaches with stern punishment, both to mark society's condemnation and to deter others from similar transgressions. The sentence on count 2 is 5 years imprisonment. The sentence on all other counts except count 4 is 5 years concurrent. The sentence on count 4 is 5.5 years consecutive, making a total sentence of 10.5 years. You will be eligible for release on licence after serving half the term, and you must abide by the conditions of the licence until the full sentence is served. Please go down, Mr. Gill.
Nathan Gill, the former MEP for UKIP and the Brexit Party, a leader of Reform UK in Wales, has been sentenced to 10.5 years in prison after pleading guilty to taking bribes from individuals linked to a pro-Russian influence campaign. Let's bring in our correspondent now, Alice Porter, who's live at the Old Bailey. Remind us all about Nathan Gill, Alice.
Well, this really is a fall from grace for Nathan Gill, who was the former leader for Reform UK for Wales. He was also a former leader for UKIP in Wales. And here he's been sentenced at the Old Bailey for 10.5 years after pleading guilty to 8 counts of bribery. And this all goes back to when he was a member of the European Parliament, and he was accused of a pro-Russian interference campaign, and that pro-Russian interference campaign had 3 strands to it. One, that he was given money to go on pro-Russian media outlets and speak in support of an ally very close to Vladimir Putin, and that's Viktor Medvedchuk. So that was one strand of this pro-Russian influence campaign. But there was another strand to it as well, and that was for him to make speeches in the European Parliament between 2018 and 2019. And these were, again, pro-Russian speeches that he was being paid for in bribes by what is now an ex-Ukrainian politician who is himself also pro-Russian, and that's Oleg Voloshin, a pro-Russian former Ukrainian politician. And they were exchanging WhatsApps, and he was encouraging him on certain speeches that he was making in European Parliament to give a favourable light to Russian behaviour. And Nathan Gill was also encouraged to co-opt other MEPs who had a similar political persuasion, and we understand investigations into that are ongoing. But these bribes that went on for a considerable period of time, we understand from Scotland Yard, accounted for about £40,000, so a significant sum of money that was exchanged there in response to Nathan Gill, a 52-year-old man, making supportive comments in the media, in Parliament, trying to give a positive message of Russia, only a few years before, of course, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So it was at an incredibly sensitive time. And this all came about in 2021 when Gill was at an airport going to fly to Russia, when he was then stopped by counter-terrorism officials and they took his phone. And it was then when they looked at his phone that they saw a number of long exchanges with Oleg Voloshin, who is this ex-Ukrainian politician who is favourable to Russia. And they had a number of exchanges back and forth, including making it clear that there were bribes that were taking place in exchange for him, Gill, promoting this pro-Russian message. And in the WhatsApps that we saw, heard in court today, those WhatsApps described Christmas gifts, and they were a euphemism for briberies that was taking place. Now, at no point in these proceedings has Gill offered any explanation for his behaviour at all, and Scotland Yard had said that he was motivated by pure greed, and that was something that was really echoed in court today by Mrs Justice Chima Grubb, who said that he had abused his position of trust as an MEP, which is meant to act with integrity and not for personal interest or gain, and that is clearly not what happened here. And she said because of the harm that he inflicted was profound, she's given him a 10.5-year prison sentence, which he will serve.
OK, Alice, thank you for giving us the very latest on that case. If you're just joining us at the moment, Nathan Gill, this is a former MEP for UKIP, the Brexit Party too, former leader of Reform UK Wales, is facing 10.5 years in prison. This is after pleading guilty to taking bribes from individuals linked to a pro-Russian influence campaign. We'll be reacting to this after a very short break. Hello, good afternoon. We do begin with breaking news. The former leader of Reform UK in Wales, Nathan Gill, has been sentenced to 10.5 years in prison at the Old Bailey after admitting making pro-Russian statements in the European Parliament for cash. He previously pleaded guilty to 8 counts of bribery on dates between December 8th, 2018 and July 18th, 2019. His activities were said to include making pro-Russian statements about events in Ukraine, in the European Parliament and in opinion pieces to news outlets such as 112 Ukraine. And in her sentencing remarks at the Old Bailey, Mrs Justice Chima Grubb said the harm Nathan Gill had inflicted was indeed profound.
When you say what someone has paid you to say, you are not speaking with sincerity. If it were your genuine opinion, you would not need to be paid for saying it. Whether or not you believed any of what you said at the behest of Voloshin and Medvedchuk, allowing money to corrupt your moral compass constitutes a grave betrayal of the trust vested in you by the electorate. Your misconduct has ramifications far beyond personal honour, which is now irretrievably damaged. It erodes public confidence in democracy. When politicians succumb to financial inducement, the public can no longer rely on the veracity of political debate, which may be tainted by disinformation. The enlisting of fellow representatives into this activity compounds the wrongdoing, undermining the mutual trust essential to the proper functioning of democratic institutions. The corrosive damage to public life caused by such actions is enduring.
Well, let's hear now from Commander Dominic Murphy from the Metropolitan Police.
Here is a UK elected official, elected to the European Parliament as an MEP, who was in turn accepting money as a bribe to make statements and or ask questions in the European Parliament on behalf of pro-Russian elements of the Ukrainian opposition. So really setting aside his democratic responsibilities as an elected official in order to operate on behalf of these pro-Russian elements. If you were to look across our casework, and particularly our casework relating to pro-Russian elements as it was in Ukraine at this time, but Russia more broadly, then yes, I do believe that with some of the individuals in this case do have direct connections to Vladimir Putin. And I've no doubt that if we were able to, we could follow this trail and it would lead straight to Moscow. What we do know from the conversations with Voloshin is that Nathan Gill actually offered his services to contact other MEPs, mostly United Kingdom MEPs, to also make statements that might be supportive of a Russian position in Ukraine.
Well, police have released footage of Nathan Gill calling on the recently elected Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to use Putin ally Viktor Medvedchuk to open up dialogue with Vladimir Putin.
Well, I think that this is very sad that Mr. Medvedchuk has felt that he no longer has the ability, has the backing of President Zelensky to act as a middleman with Russia, because, quite frankly, in the European Union, in Europe, we expect nations to be working towards peace, and we want dialogue. We want President Zelensky to be speaking with his neighbours, not to be ignoring them and not to be ignoring this opportunity to have that dialogue and have that discussion about the Donbass region. So it's quite sad, but I think that we have a brand new president in President Zelensky. He has to find his feet, and I think that he will realize that an opportunity to use somebody who's experienced like Mr. Medvedchuk would be a sensible thing to do. And I suspect that he should approach him and reopen up those channels so that we can have dialogue and conversation, because that's what's needed today. We don't.
Well, footage of Nathan Gill being questioned by police on his relationship with another Putin ally, Oleg Voloshin, has also been released by police.
Oleg Voloshin sent a message to you and he says, "I've received all promised Xmas gifts and requested 5 more postcards for your kind help next week during the debate." So can you tell me what he's talking about there?
No comment.
He says, "I've received all promised Xmas gifts." Do you know what the Xmas gifts were or the Christmas gifts are?
No comment.
Who is Oleg Voloshin?
No comment.
And how long have you known Oleg Voloshin?
No comment.
Well, let's go live to our correspondent, Alice Porter, who's live at the Old Bailey. Alice, this all dates back, doesn't it, to some WhatsApp messages that investigators got hold of?
Yes, that's right. And this is a real fall from grace for Nathan Gill. He arrived here at the Old Bailey earlier today to a media frenzy before making his place in the dock here at the Old Bailey, a court that is usually reserved for people who've committed murders. But here you have a man, a 52-year-old man, who used to be leader of Reform UK for Wales. But here he is being sentenced for 10.5 years in prison for accepting bribes. Really shocking to hear the details in court. But as you say, these go back to when he was at an airport in the UK making a flight to Russia back in 2021 when he was stopped by security and counter-terrorism, and they picked up his phone, and it was then going through the WhatsApp messages between him and Oleg Voloshin, who was a Ukrainian politician who with a pro-Russian stance, and it was there, these WhatsApps, which revealed the communication between the two of them, and most crucially, evidence of bribery that was taking place. And in court today, we heard of the complexity of this pro-Russian influence campaign. Firstly, it involved Mr. Gill making pro-Russian statements on Russian-friendly media channels in Ukraine. So that was one part of it, and he was meant to be making statements in support of Viktor Medvedchuk, who is a very close ally of Putin's. That was one part of this campaign. The second part was to be speaking in the European Parliament, because he was an MEP, and it was between 2018 and 2019 that he made a number of pro-Russian statements, many of which the WhatsApps between him and Oleg Voloshin were then, you could see the exchanging of WhatsApps which were then influencing what he was saying in Parliament, and many times he was reading direct quotes from Mr. Voloshin. But Mr. Gill was also asked and encouraged to co-opt other MEPs as well, and there is an investigation into that is ongoing. But we understand that the amount of money that Mr. Gill was receiving in return for these bribes was around £40,000, so it's a really significant sum. But throughout the police investigations, as you heard earlier, he said no comment and wouldn't give any more indication as to his motivation behind accepting these bribes. But the judge presiding over the sentencing today, Mrs. Justice Chima Grub, said that he abused his position because, of course, as an MEP, he should not be doing anything in exchange for money and nothing for personal gain, is what she said. And because of what the harm that he inflicted was so profound and that his behaviour was so persistent over such a significant period of time, that she sentenced him to 10.5 years in prison.
OK, for now, Alice, thank you very much for that update.